effort. It's really unfortunate that we have to meet today to consider this legislation under these circumstances. But since October, when Congress granted the previous administration unfettered access to taxpayer blank check, we've seen a steady stream of reports outlining mismanagement, waste, and lack of oversight that was all too predictable during the initial consideration of the TARP megabank bailout. And let me point out again that it was supported by President Obama and by the Democrats in the Congress. So you can't blame all of this on the Bush administration. The members of Congress and the public were scared by a doomsday scenario that promised Armageddon if this singular proposal was not approved immediately. Deliberation, patience, prudence yielded to panic, and the product of those poor decisions has led us to where we are today. Another cliche, act in haste and repent at leisure, has assumed a new and expensive meaning. Americans are $350 billion poorer, and their sacrifices are about to double as the Senate rejected S.J. Res. 5, which is the companion to the measure before us today. What is particularly troublesome is that President Obama was elected on the promise of bringing change, but another $350 billion is not change. Does President Obama think that if the bailout isn't working, he must need a bigger bucket? The reasoning seems to be that since President Bush got his slush fund, it's only fair to grant the same to the incoming administration. But as I say, two wrongs don't make a right. This is just as big a mistake as the original bailout. Now that the government has an ownership stake, the independent decision-making of nationalized entities will certainly take a back seat to political correctness and pork barrel politics. Given my passionate opposition to the bailout mania, I am often asked what I support instead of more bailouts. At the time TARP was originally considered, I joined a bipartisan working group of congresswomen in writing to Speaker Pelosi and Republican leader Boehner, expressing our concerns and offering reasonable alternatives for consideration. I also personally delivered proposals offered by President John Allison of BB&T directly to bailout negotiators, and I co-sponsored legislation H.R. 7223 prepared by the Republican Study Committee containing a comprehensive approach to dealing with this crisis. But at this point, it's clear that less is more. The federal government has done enough, I would say too much, and even many supporters of the initial TARP megabank bailout are now saying these efforts should be given time to work. After all, it was unwise federal policies that prompted the excesses at the root of the financial collapse. In that respect, as George Mason University professor Russell Roberts has put forward, don't just do something, stand there. At the same time, reasonable alternatives have been offered up to stimulate our economy by some of the finest minds in our nations. These alternatives have merit that I believe would be recognized if Congress would only pursue prudent deliberation instead of a hasty rush to judgment. Free market solutions such as this are preferable and more effective than the Keynesian approach being discussed in Congress today. I'm sure, though, that today we're going to hear without the TARP megabank bailout, we'd be much worse off than without it. That's what Congressman Frank has already said. But not only is this argument speculative and untrue, but it's a real tough sell to those struggling to find a job, credit, or means to pay their bills. As the old adage goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. We just seem incapable of learning the lessons of the past and destined to see history repeat itself. I urge our members to join me today and do the right thing. Support this resolution and send a signal to the Obama administration that the bailout mania has to stop. And I would add one more thing. I did introduce this bill in the last session, so it would have applied to the Bush administration as well as to the Obama administration.